Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Welcome into the, well, I guess the pre-show, if you will. I'm going to get started here in just a moment. Figured on this side of the broadcast, YouTube side, we're going live now. Figured I'll let you guys know what's happening this week before I start recording the audio version as well. This is only on the YouTube side, so if you're wondering sort of what the plan is, if you're listening to the audio side, or if you know someone who is listening to audio side, I will put out a tweet a little bit later on today. But I'm actually going to be recording two shows today. This one will be live because it's spring break for me because I'm in grad school. And there's some things going on later in the week that I may not be able to record. I'm going to be recording two shows. I think today's be doing one when you're listening to live, and then the second one will be I'll just record afterward. And the topics here, I think, be sort of like an evergreen. Excuse me, in the evergreen show, sort of when you have just a show, if you will, that is you can watch or play any time of the year, for the most part. So, a little message here in the pre-show, if you will. Going to get the recording started here for the audio version for Spotify. If you don't know, if you didn't know, if you're new here, you have the YouTube version. We also have the Spotify version that was recorded, uploaded afterwards. Usually, I know we were a bit later on the last episode, but it's fixed now. So, in a second or so, we're going to start recording for Spotify, and then we will, after this show is over, I will then record a secondary evergreen show that will be posted on Thursday. So it'll be pre-recorded. So here we go. We're going to start the actual show here. So if you're live, just move the slider over on the V2 video a little bit, about 2 minutes in. So in 3, 2, 1. Welcome in. This is Four Verticals Podcast, episode 79. One episode away from getting to episode 80. Thank you so much for joining us in the both YouTube live chat, or I guess YouTube live stream in here on Spotify as well. Thank you so much for joining in. Got a big show today. Got some spring information to tell you about. Spring practices been going on, so figured probably good enough time to start talking about some of the practice reports, the feelers that are being put out there, and also talking about certainly with one being LSU. It's a team that we have not included in the spring practice or spring questions segment that we were doing the past couple of shows. For some reason, I forgot to include them, if I recall correctly. So they'll be in here a little bit, but generally, most of these teams I'm talking about today or discussing on the show have already started spring practice. So how about that? Can't believe it's already here. In addition to that, spring practice, you got thoughts on Hugh Freeze and Auburn this year. Can they win in 2025? Then we will wrap up the show with some even more DC drama as well. It's been pretty tough. If you're a DC fan, a Warner Brothers fan, it's not been good. It's been pretty bad, I will say the least. But though there might be some positiveness, if you will, if you're thinking from a positive standpoint. There's maybe some good news, but it's once again even more drama, I guess. What else is new? So again, welcome in episode 79. My notes here says 78. Well, that's not correct. YouTube stream says 79. So one more show from getting to episode 80. So how about that? Before we get into the main body of the show, I'm going to get some water real quick, and then we will begin the actual show. We'll go into the first topic here. So, all right. So, a couple of things to point out here. Again, with these spring practice reports, a lot of this stuff, and even the spring games, the ones that are taking place, look, these are just things, or not things, practices or reports that we're getting. They don't tell you the full picture, right? I feel like the way I describe spring and all these spring practices, and to a certain extent fall camp as well, think of these as not the finished product, clearly, because we don't have games coming up or official games until August and September. Think of these sort of like when you have a movie trailer for a film, or not movie trailer, but a trailer for a TV show, movie, video game, where it does not represent the final product, right? A lot of these times you get teaser trailers, full trailers, and previews, TV spots. they don't always represent the full picture of what the movie is, what the TV show is, or the video game. That's what spring practice is. Spring practice to me is like a trailer for football season that you're still working out the kinks and the finer details. And of course, you have the spring window, transfer portal window coming up. So a lot of these rosters will change a little bit. Depth charts will change, and players may or may not be on the roster come fall camp. So just a little disclaimer there. Haven't talked about Oklahoma yet. This is not so much a practice report, but sort of a question, if you will, or a broader topic, is offensive improvement. We saw the offense last year. If you were, paying attention to practice reports and everything that was going on this time last year, from listening to shows like, Cover 3, Josh Pape, you remember those guys. I'm certainly I remember Pape bringing this up, and he brought this up on the Sunday show, that he was hearing a lot of things, and a lot of folks are hearing a lot of things about the Oklahoma offense when Jackson Arnold was there, being sort of turnover prone, sloppy, a lot of weirdness going on there. And some folks, including me to a certain extent, we're a little bit concerned, but we're hoping that maybe that wasn't going to be the case come fall camp. And there's always a chance that's the case, right? I just mentioned spring is usually more like a movie or a trailer for a movie and TV show versus the final product being a movie or full-on show. That's what spring practice is. It's a real preview and a snippet of what the team could look like. So that was my thought, that, of course, it's a preview of what the season could look like. Yes, it's a concern. Am I totally concerned yet? No. But then as you got into fall camp, those same reports started percolating again. They were propping up again. You started hearing more and more stuff about, Jackson Arnold again turned the ball over a lot, similar to spring practice in the bowl game. The offense is looking sloppy. You also saw that when the season started with, I think, the game against Temple. It wasn't very clean. And I think it was evident last year, and I think for a lot of folks who are denying it, and there was a lot of people who denied it, and Josh Pate made it apparent to remind you that folks were denying that it reared its ugly head against Tennessee, South Carolina, Auburn to a certain extent, even though they won that game. Offenses was not good last year, and had the coaching change with Seth Luttrell out, bringing in Arbuckle, the OC. Job material also comes with him. We'll see what happens there. I think the information that we're getting, if you will, these sort of limited information, because of course a lot of this stuff's not public. Again, I'm not someone who gets active information from people. I just get the information I get from watching these shows. So it's sort of like regurgitating information, but I don't have access to this stuff. Like, for example, I don't actively go on message boards. There's a lot of that stuff I can't, how should I say this? I don't have the ability to access it, a lot of it, mostly from a financial standpoint, because again, it's, those things do cost money. But shows like Josh Pate, Cover 3 do let you sort of give you the information that you would otherwise get on a message board or a premium subscription, basically for you for free. But the information I am hearing from multiple sources, not just Josh Pate and Cover 3, but the general consensus is there could be some improvement there with, Batir being there and Arbuckle being the OC for Brent Venables, and a very, very high volatile year for them. I'll agree on that, dude. I'm not totally on the Brent Venables is, getting sent to Gitmo after the season if it goes poorly. I'm not there yet. But you would reasonably assume, even before spring practice began, that offense should improve. A new situation there. Hopefully the receivers will step up. A lot of those questions that will not be answered or fully revealed yet, particularly some of the issues won't be revealed yet. But some of the stuff you're hearing there, it's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of, is it really going to improve that much? But again, you're hopefully upgrading at quarterback to a certain extent in terms of experience-wise and turnover-wise. I mean, that's the only thing Oklahoma, I think, would really need is just better injury luck, which you can't obviously predict, and you can't control that unless you go, the nutrition route, strength and conditioning, sports science, stuff like that, things that general college ball fans don't think of. But injury help would help, or injury luck would help, better injury luck. Wide receivers stepping up and just turnovers. Don't turn the ball over a lot. Let's cut those down a little bit, and you'll see better production, I think. I say that's easy enough, but it's a lot harder than that because you're working with 18 to 24-year-old players, not student athletes, or not students anymore, or have not been students for a long time, and especially now. So that's Oklahoma. Florida, DJ Lagway, health concerns, sort of something that's been percolating beneath the surface. It's been reported by a lot of people about the whole injury situation. He's not throwing in spring practice, has been limited. Of course, Billy Napier has been sort of giving you denial answers, being pretty coy about it. I mean, why would you reveal all that, right? Because a lot of that stuff is mostly HIPAA stuff, which is the health, personal health situation there. So you don't want to reveal that stuff because I don't think like me or even some random person in like Powell, Wyoming needs to know DJ Lagway's health. I don't think we really care about that generally, and plus you don't have to reveal that. But whatever. Health been a concern. I'm not too concerned necessarily. I mean, as long as he's reasonably ready to go by fall camp and, when they shoot up against Long Island, which is a real team, by the way. It's not a team builder team from College Bowl 25. It's a real actual team they're playing. Long Island. It's a Division II, I believe. I think they used to be Division III. But as long as DJ Lagway's healthy enough to play against Long Island and he's not in a Carson Beck situation, not the girlfriend stuff, not the stuff going on with the women's basketball player and him breaking up apparently, which that's not topic on the show, by the way, because I really don't care. But it's not that situation. It's more with Carson Beck, his health in terms of, because he had injury last year and he's had surgery and he's rehabbing still. Obviously won't play in the spring. Hopefully be better, a lot healthier by the time fall camp comes around, but it's not a guarantee. This is a little bit different, I think, at least what it looks like, but who knows? But that's been a sort of point of contention, if you will, around Gator fans and college football fans alike in different shows. LSU, not mainly a subject here. I know a lot of folks have been talking about the offensive side and, Garrett Nussmeier, and he's needs to step up a little bit and cut down turnovers, and hopefully some of the receivers will step up a little bit. And I think they will. I think they have good talent there. My little mind here is not thinking towards that because I know what I'm getting there. I know what I'm getting with Garrett Nussmeier. I know what I'm sort of getting with wide receivers. They should be fairly good this year. Some guys are returning. Has some new pieces there. My actual concern, or not concern, but hope here is that LSU's defense will continue to improve. It was an improvement last year. Yes, it was an improvement. Though there were some times where it wasn't. The A&M game with Marcel Reed and a quarterback run. The Florida game with DJ Lagway, they were hurt a lot, as you can tell by running quarterbacks. I think of year two with, Blake Baker and Kevin Peoples on the D line. I think with Bo Davis being there as well, formerly of Texas. Before that, he was at Bama, I believe, in Georgia. That'll help a little bit, or not help a little bit, help a lot. Again, that whole staff there, LSU too, by the way, it's really good. Not just, Blake Baker being there, formerly of Missouri, but not just Bo Davis, but Kevin Peoples, a guy that Josh Pate has a lot of respect for, who I see no one really talking about. He's really good defensive position coach. He's been around for a while in the sport. Very underrated in terms of the public perception of him, but the real nerds like me, Cover 3 and Josh Pate, we know from what we have seen or heard, like me, we know how much a lot of these industry types that respect Kevin Peoples, and I think him in a second year along with Baker and Bo Davis being there this year, gonna help a lot with them, and I think you'll see that defensive unit improve even more, given where it was last year. And I think last year was an improvement. And of course, you can give him some of the volatility of Brian Kelly. A lot of folks think he's on the hot seat. I'm not going there just yet. Yes, is there pressure competitively? Of course there is. There's always pressure competitively. Is there hot seat pressure? I'm not there yet. Some folks are already there yet. Some folks were there last year, and some folks were even there after Brian Kelly's first game, which I think that's frankly ridiculous and stupid. Look, I don't want to get mad at a lot of people about, again, some of those NFL flybys and the talking heads on TV. I don't understand where the whole, Brian Kelly needs to be fired after losing to Florida State his first year. Like, okay, I don't think you guys understand how the sport works. At least college football works. The NFL and NBA, that's different. We've seen guys. I'm not going to go on the whole spill here. I don't need to repeat myself, but yeah, LSU defensive improvement. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about Kevin Peoples. I'm thinking about Blake Baker and that whole brain trust there. That whole group of people there, and how much respect people have for them. And I think with them being there for a second year can sort of help nurture and presumably even improve. I know another aspect of that is transfer portal additions. They weren't really good last year and the year before. Hopefully this time around, they hit a lot better. But again, the portal is a lot like, going to the grocery store and, you buy all the products and maybe it's a factory error product. Maybe there's an extra, defective chip in there or whatever, potato chip or whatever. Who hasn't seen that before? But that's what you're looking at for LSU. Defensive improvement, sort of, maybe they hit better on the transfer portal this time around. We'll see. Let's see here. Ohio State is the last one I have here. A couple of topics here. This information, by the way, is not is actually coming from somewhere. It's 11 Warriors, the Ohio State. I think it's the SI channel, I believe. I never actually understood what 11 Warriors is with. They're not 247. That's I think Bucknuts, I believe. I think this is Sports Illustrated, I believe, one of them. But based on what 11 Warriors are beat writers there for Ohio State, some of their operations, because they also started their spring practice, I believe, yesterday. Some operations they had. One of them is not really much of a surprise, but interesting. Sort of deals with one of the questions I had about Ohio State, which is the pieces they're losing, key contributors moving on to the NFL. Will they be replacing them? Some of that starting with the defense. Malik Hartford, been there for a while, four-star guy. Him and Caleb Downs have sort of been leading the defense, especially on the backside. He was starting the first team. Again, he's been there a long time. And I think with Ohio State in particular, when I mentioned this, I had mentioned this back a while ago, back when we were talking about, not a while ago, but last week, when referring to Ohio State and the pieces they're replacing and the new, players that will be coming in, I mentioned that there's a lot of, not just me saying it too, there's a lot of other folks that brought this up, that it's not so much the talent's there, but it's the names. The names you don't know. I think Malik Hartford, I believe that's how you pronounce it, he'll be a name that while Ohio State fans know who he is, and certainly the core college football nerds, the weenies and whatnot, like me, and some of these insiders and show hosts may know who he is and remember him from recruiting. Again, he's a former Corner 247 4-star kid, graded out pretty well. He's a really good pro comp. He has all the measurables, all the intangibles there. Hasn't really seen the field that much, and that's expected. They have a lot of talent to go through there, and now they've had a lot of turnover. He's probably going to be a key contributor. He's starting on the first team. It's guys like him, not so much Caleb Downs, but sort of like the Malik Hoffords of the world. And some of the guys on the offensive line, too. There's also some movement there. Some guys who were not starting last year, hearing some names around, being thrown around. The Austin kid, for example. But especially on defense, we're losing guys like JTT and Jack Sawyer and some of the other contributors on that team that have been there for a while. Who's stepping up? Who are the guys who are stepping up? And I think someone like a Hartford, Caleb Downs, for example, those are the guys I think you're looking for who were massive contributors last year. There's still talent. So look, Caleb Downs is the best defensive player on that team in terms of talent, 5-star ratings and whatnot. But he was just there last year. He's not a guy who's been with Ohio State for the past 3 years or so. He was at Bama his first year, transfers over. I think some of these guys who've been there for a while, like Hartford, are going to be sort of key contributors. And I think him being on the first team is not surprising. Again, veteran presence. And look, this may not be the same come the spring, after spring, come fall camp. This could look completely different. Like I mentioned, this is just a preview. This is not the final product. So just because Caleb Downs is not necessarily on the first team, doesn't mean it's going to be that come, first week of August. But it's fine. Just relax a little bit. So that's that aspect. But then the other aspect is this quarterback situation. And it's really kind of boiling on down to two guys, Julian Sand and Lincoln Kineholes, I believe that's how you pronounce it, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of chatter there about those two players. And look, Kineholes, if you don't know who he is, he's a former 4-star kid, 6'3", 207. Been around the program for a number of years. He was there last year, redshirted 4-star kid. Committed in 2022, class 23, so he was a freshman last year. Didn't play a whole lot. I don't remember playing. If he did, it was very in spurts, right? He redshirted, so of course you have minimum of like 4 or 5 games, I believe, and then you once you're redshirted, you can't play. Or if you want to be redshirted, you have to only play in 4, 5 or less games. That's it. Then you can start redshirt. And he obviously definitely did that. But I think of Kineholz and Sand, there's definitely a talent gap there. Julian Sand, former 5-star kid. Again, sort of like Caleb Downs, transfer in from Bama after Saban left. or retired, not left. He's retired. So and a lot of folks are worried about, hey, is this more of an indictment of maybe Julian Say is not the right guy? And look, we don't know. I'm not, Ryan Day's not from the program, and I haven't traveled to Columbus recently. I haven't met these guys personally, but from what I can tell, there is certainly a battle there. We'll see who ends up taking the job, but I think the overall feel and the sort of vibe is that Julian Sand will eventually take that job over. He's more talented, more of a dual threat guy. I mean, nothing against Kleinholz, but even the things, 11 Warriors has a little poll here from the viewers, and there's about 2,000 fans or voters, if you will. And of course, we all know how scientific polls are. A real majority of the people who voted on this, the 2,000, believe that Julian Sand is going to be the starter. The other 11% say otherwise. That includes Kleinhold and St. Clair. So, who's the other quarterback? He's the third quarterback. So, the true favorite here is probably Julian Sand. And look, is there a universe? Is there a route where Kleinholz takes over as the starter? Of course there is. There's always a route that happens. Injury. Maybe Sand struggles a lot. Of course, it just started yesterday. So what? There's not a massive sample size information on Julian Sand. He hasn't really been in a meaningful situation where he's taken over as a starter. I know there's rumors and theories this time last year about, is Julian Sand going to overtake Will Harrod as a starter? I mean, look, there's thoughts about that, and certainly there's an avenue for that to happen, but I wasn't totally on board on that. A lot of folks weren't on board on that. Some folks were just putting out their speculation. But my personal belief that Kleinholz is probably going to be the starter. That's just, not the starter. I just think that Sand is more talented, and I think based on what we've seen of him and from the recruiting standpoint, the kid's probably going to be the starter there. But again, him and Kleinholz splitting the first team, that's not surprising. Those are, of course, the most veteran guys there. I would expect that Sand probably takes over, but it's interesting. I mean, they still have a lot of great talent in terms of wide receivers there. Of course, you have Jeremiah Smith, Cardell Tate, former IMG kid, and most of you probably remember him from the Bishop Sycamore game a number of years ago. Don't think we forgot about that. We remember. He's still there, former 5-star, 4-star kid. Of course, like I mentioned, Jeremiah Smith. So there's talent there. We'll see what the running back situation looks like. It's Will McCormick, I believe, and then Bennett Christian are over there at tight end. Of course, you have James Peoples at running back. I don't know, I got this confused here in the article. But yeah, so it's McCormick and Christian for tight end. That's been reported from Bucknuts. I mean, not getting confused here. It's not the right source. 11 Warriors, though I probably should have a Bucknuts subscription, but I don't. But this is from 11 Warriors, to be specific here. So, so McCormick Christian took reps at the tight end position. Then you also have James Peoples, probably going to be your starter at running back. So that's the Ohio State sort of bonanza there, and that's sort of all the information I have currently in terms of spring practice. I'm sure we'll get even more information coming from various sources of information. But yeah, it's the fun time of the year. We get a lot of reports and different findings and stuff like that about spring practice. Not the same as fall camp, because I think fall camp is more urgency. Of course, you're getting closer to the season. You'll have a lot more, the 2 scrimmages you have every single year, and then so on and so forth. But yeah, that's the little spring recap of information, some new information, some old information. Some of it regurgitated because it's publicly been out there, and some of it somewhat new. But pretty excited now that we are in spring, and pretty soon we'll start getting even more practice reports. I mean, this something fell off there on the off camera there or behind the set here, but very much still looking forward to getting more reports, because that's the best time of the year, is getting the spring reports. At least around this time of the year. I'm gonna get some more water here, and then we'll briefly touch on what happened this weekend with the severe weather stuff. So we're taking a break here. Then we'll wrap up the show with the final 2 topics here. If you guys couldn't tell, too, I was up late, a little bit late last night. So if you notice I'm a little bit tired, that's probably why. But if figured I'll take a little bit of intermission here to talk about what happened with the severe weather this weekend, especially in the southeast and Midwest. It was bad. I was keeping an eye on Friday. The event started on Friday. That was like the St. Louis area down to northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, western Tennessee. Really bad. I think the last time I heard, it was around 40 people lost their lives, both with the severe storms and the wildfire stuff. Some of those tornadoes, man, if you ever, if you're not a weather nerd like me, you won't understand this, but if you are one like me, I'm sure a lot of you were, watching guys like Ryan Hall and the local stations probably. And look, kudos to Ryan Hall, man. I mean, I know a lot of folks don't like him, especially in the legacy media types, because he's on YouTube mostly, and he, has different tech. He's on YouTube, right? And it's a little different universe than legacy media stuff. And I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding him and his thumbnail stuff. Personally, I don't care, and I think Ryan does a pretty good job. And there's other guys too. Max Velocity does a really good job too. He's also one of those YouTuber types. And kudos to both of those guys. I mean, they're on for a long, long, long time. Like 11 hours plus. I think Ryan and him were on until 3 a.m. on Friday. Now, I eventually fell asleep once the event sort of trying to wind down a little bit, at least on Friday. But man, some of those radar signatures, if you weren't looking on radar, like the radar apps, the ones that the professional ones that you actually pay up front, like Radar Scope, Radar Omega, the ones that actually give you access to the National Weather Service radars and all of this, different layers of the radar, reflectivity, correlation coefficient, velocity product. Again, if you're not a big weather nerd, if you ever downloaded those apps or used them, you'd be totally lost. If you're someone like me, it's pretty easy. But man, some of those radar signatures and some of the footage too from the storm chasers, just bad. And the Saturday event, which in the weather community, a lot of folks are calling it, bust, it overperformed or underperformed. Look, I really don't care about that because it was still a tragedy, right? I think 12 people lost their lives, I believe, somewhere around there. I mean, it was bad in Mississippi. It's bad in Alabama. People still lost homes. Yes. I know a lot of people have mentioned, well, it could have been a lot worse than what the models were saying. Well, here's the thing. The models are the models. The models are going to do what they're going to do, right? The GFS, the HER model, which is high resolution, rapid refresh, part of the CAMs, the convection allowing models. Look, those things are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to portray something that is coming. The same thing goes for hurricanes, too, in any weather system or impactful weather system. The models are going to do what the models are going to do. They're going to paint something that's not totally going to be accurate. There's always going to be, flies in the ointment, as Trey over at Convective Chronicles always says. And by the way, he's another good source too. If you really want to get into the weeds of stuff and looking into what it goes to preparing for a storm chase, go over to Convective Chronicles. Trey over there does a really good job of his breakdowns and sort of looking at past events, case studies, if you will, of past severe weather stuff. So his channel is really good, but there's always flies in the ointment. And I think for Saturday there was, the part of it was the geometry of the trough, which is the mechanism, if you will, for severe weather stuff. The morning convection, the morning storms, and western Mississippi didn't help, if you will, in terms of getting the instability levels high enough over much of Alabama and northern Mississippi and southern Tennessee, which was good. That certainly helped calm things down. That's like putting out a campfire with water. That's what happens. But still, it was still a tragedy. I mean, a lot of people lost their lives. A lot of folks, their lives changed on Saturday and Friday as well, and it sucks. I mean, that's the thing as weather enthusiasts. You look at both the good and the bad, right? The good stuff is, looking at the cool tornado footage and whatnot. It's tornadoes, especially in an open field. That's the fun stuff. And I've never been on the storm chasing thing before. I've never done that before. I don't like to do it as someone who understands the risk. And I would much rather go with people who are really experienced and, will want to go with someone who's just starting out. It'd be really cool to go on one of those, but I also understand that look, if you watch any of these shows or watch stuff like Reed Timmer or guys like him or even Trey over at Convective Chronicles, look, it's different. And I'll move on from this and get back to college football on our DC topic here. But when it comes to storm chasing, from what I've seen and heard and watched, the thrills is one thing. Seeing the tornado again, the footage, getting off the analytical data and the scientific data, and for those who are the research side and even from thrill-seeking side, you also get data as well. The dark side of it is, even Josh Pig brought this up on the show Sunday, and I completely agree with him. The dark side of it is also just as important as the thrill scientific side, which is dealing with the damage. And most of the times, storm spotters are the first ones they're the first responders. And I think a lot of those guys, Reed Timmer and those guys, or people like him even to a certain extent, they train for CPR. They train for first aid. They train to be first responders. And, there were several that go to, if you ever watched, it was the old Storm Chasers, a show, I believe it was the Discovery Channel. I believe it was one of those channels. I think a lot of those are actually on Reed Timmer's YouTube page, I believe. But go look those up. And I think it's the one that Reed was on, the Yazoo City tornado back in 2010, the EF4 specifically. They were the first responders for that tornado. Reed and his team, they're the first ones there. They literally had to take people to the hospital. It was bad. And I think that's what Josh P. was referring to. If you listen to the show on Sunday, that's what he was referring to. Some of the stories he will not tell on air is probably the stories of him taking people to the hospital and dealing with people who had major injuries from debris and whatnot, which is why it is important to have the helmet on, by the way, which is why guys like meteorologists like James Spann preach that, because the helmet helps you in terms of not getting pin injuries, especially if there's a lot of debris and maybe you get lofted somehow. I know it's really graphic, but if you somehow get lifted by the tornado, and because of how strong the winds are, you could be lifted, lofted in the air and land on a hard surface or whatever. You can get a head injury, get a concussion. And look, I'll stop there with the weather stuff, but I just want to bring it up there. I know there's been a lot of controversy with the, was it a bust? Was it not a bust? I don't care. I mean, people's lives are affected. People lost a lot of stuff, and lost family members, friends, and everything. It was a bad day, bad weekend, if you will. And unfortunately, the season still continues. We still have the rest of March and April and May, and also June too. June was a lot pretty busy too with severe weather. Not so much tornadoes, because transitions to more, of course, to tropical stuff, and along with the Midwest convection, which is usually more straight line winds and damaging wind stuff. But anyway, just some thoughts there on the weather this past weekend. It wasn't really a topic on the show, but sort of filled some time here, if you will. I'm gonna get some water, real quick, more water here, and then we will continue. So I've been doing this little sort of a mini series, if you will, within the show, is this sort of little segment about certain coaches. We did it with Scott Frost last week. We did it with Rich Rod the day before, or week before, I believe, or a couple of shows ago. Just talking about, can they win in 2025? Talk about it again with Scott Frost, Rich Rod at West Virginia. And then we have Hugh Freeze and Auburn. Can they win in 2025? There's a lot of pressure there. Again, mostly competitive. Also, it's kind of 50-50, right? 50% of the pressure Hugh Freeze is facing is job security. There's unfortunately, no doubt about that. And again, I know a lot of joints saying that. Unfortunately, there is a lot of pressure there. I think to the sentiment too. I may do more of a broader topic on this, probably more towards when we get closer to the season, maybe. About there probably is lining up to, or this season is probably lining up to have a lot of changes in the SEC in terms of coaches. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of coaches who either move on, retire, whatever. I think the vibe in general is just there's going to be a lot of coaching changes there, unfortunately. A lot of these guys will probably not be there this time next year. And Hugh Freeze may be one of them. Who knows? But I think the pressure he's facing, again, 50% of it is job security, and then the other 50% of it is competitive pressure. Look, there's certainly an avenue for Auburn to win this year. I mean, there's always an avenue for teams to win. There's always is. And look, Auburn last year was bad offensively. There was a lot of bad, even though they've upgraded the talent, even though they brought in a bunch of 5-star kids, and Perry Thompson, Cam Coleman, DeMarcus Riddick. Still wasn't good enough last year. Second straight year of having a losing season. 2 years in the last 3 years or so where they missed the bowl game. 5-7 records. And look, I've not been around that long, but this probably ever since the 2020 season. So this decade has been, since 2020 up until now, the worst years for Auburn football I can ever remember. And look, back in the 2010s, the 2000s, from what I can remember, a lot of bad seasons for Auburn football, right? And you have the 08 season, 2012 season. Those were historically bad years, 2012 being one of them. But in terms of a stretch, in terms of a bad stretch for Auburn, I cannot remember a number of years where it's been this bad. And part of it, some of you will blame Brian Harsin. By the way, the current OC at Cal, ACC Cal. People will blame it on Brian Harsin. There's certainly a lot of blame to go there, especially on recruiting. Most will also blame Malzahn for this as well because he did not recruit well enough to sustain success. I agree on that. I think there's also blame for Hugh Freeze as well. I think the hires he made, especially the first year, keeping some guys, bringing in some guys, didn't necessarily work out, and that's normal, especially for new staffs coming in. You'll have some turnover. Billy Napier has dealt with it. Kellen DeBoer dealt with it last year. Kirby Smart's dealt with it. Ryan Day has dealt with it a number of times. Lincoln Riley finally is dealing with it. All of these coaches will deal with it, especially if you're at a new place, right? You'll make some hires. Some of them will work, some will not work. And look, that's the way it works in that business and coaching. You'll have some hires that work out, some that don't. It's not like the same as the video game, College Football 25, where you don't have to deal with this real life. It's not real life. It's a video game, and unfortunately, in real life, that's different. You do have to deal with actual human beings, not just AI characters in a video game. I think for Hugh Freeze and Auburn, they learned that lesson, especially after this first year, that some of these hires that he made, and along with the pretensions that he made from the previous staff, weren't necessarily the things he needed to be successful. That happened. He made some changes, did well in recruiting. His first full recruiting class, again, it was top 10. This past one was also top 10 as well. Last year was limited because of quarterback. Payne Thorne just wasn't good enough. Turnovers were a problem as well. If you cut those things, you maybe change those things. Auburn probably wins more games last year, and they probably make it to a bowl game, more than likely. But it didn't happen. And I think the only thing we can do now is look forward. And the path for Auburn to win this year, again, I think it's unfortunately lies a lot on Jackson Arnold. Okay, we just mentioned a little bit ago about his time at Oklahoma. Now he's at Auburn now, and it's the big stick here is can he essentially do for what Bo Nix did after he left Auburn, goes to Oregon and ultimately improves. And I think for someone Jackson Arnold, can he do that for Hugh Freeze and Auburn? Can he be what Bo Nix was at Oregon when he left Auburn? Now it's the opposite. Now it's Jackson Arnold leaving Oklahoma to go to Auburn. I don't think that's a guarantee. Look, nothing in college football is guaranteed at all. Nothing's ever guaranteed. But I think for Auburn to be successful, that's unfortunately a part of it. That's part of the deal. Is can Jackson Arnold not be the problem, but be the reason why they win games versus being the reason why they lose games? And I think that's important as well. The other thing to point out is the schedule. The schedule is once again somewhat tough for the SEC. Conference-wise, it's tough, like it was last year. Just same opponents, just the venues change. So, for example, you played Oklahoma at Jordan Hare Stadium last year. You play them at Norman this year, and that's unfortunately your first conference game. I'll say this too: they're Auburn's first 5 games in terms of major opponents, not their G5 opponents, all on the road, and they don't have a true home game against a reasonable opponent until October, which is against Georgia. It's like a whole 2 months almost, where you don't have a home game with a meaningful opponent. That's just the way the schedule worked out. Now, luckily, it irons out more once you get towards the meat of the season. But man, like the first 5 games, it's 2 out of those games are at home versus G5 opponents. One of them, by the way, is a G5 team in state. Very rare to see that for Auburn. Very rare for Auburn and Bama in particular to have a game against an in-state opponent, especially in the G5, which is South Alabama. I believe the first time ever, right? They ever played each other. How about that? But you have that. You have another, I think it's a MAC team, isn't it? Like Ball State or something. Yeah, Ball State. But besides those 2 games, up until October, which is the Georgia game, you have on road at Baylor, Friday night game, by the way. So probably the Friday night Fox games. First time Auburn, by the way, will be on Fox since 2006, I believe. That was like old Cotton Bowl. So you're at Baylor there. A game I would assume, this is me speculating here, that Would I be surprised Baylor's favorite at some point once we get closer? Of course, it's a long way from now, but Baylor on the road. That's a Friday. Come back, two home games against G5s. Then your first 2 SEC games are on the road at Oklahoma, at Texas A&M. No bye week at all. Just that's back-to-back road trips there. Don't feel good about that. I have a bad feeling about those games. That's back-to-back road games. And again, luckily it's in the same region, but still, that's really tough. Oklahoma. I don't care how bad the team is. That's tough. Not to mention going to Kyle State, to Kyle Field at College Station. It's based on what happened last year. I'm sure Mike Elko and company are going to want revenge for what happened last year. That's a place historically Auburn has been pretty good at, but recently they have not been good at. And they've, in fact, the complete opposite of what they were doing in the past decade, or the last decade. They've not won there this decade. They've been 0-2. Then it's, Georgia, Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Bama, and they have their FCS team. So the typical Auburn schedule, at least, based on what you did last year, or what you had last year. Of course, like I mentioned, venues change, but it helps that you get Bama and Georgia at home. It doesn't guarantee anything that we've seen in the past couple of years. And just because Georgia and Bama come to Jordan here doesn't necessarily mean it's a guarantee win for Auburn. Does it mean it's a closer game than it would have been on the road for them? Yeah, maybe, but it's not a guarantee at all. Certainly for them to win, but I think that schedule is still tough. That's part of the factor for Auburn. And then the third part of this is that some of these five-star kids, the kids that, not kids anymore, just the 5-star players have been recruiting out of high school, and the ones that Auburn's been layered over the past couple of years and past recruiting classes, those guys have to step up. Guys like Perry Thompson, Bryce Kane, especially on the receiver side. Again, they've upgraded that position mightily since Hugh Freeze has gotten there. Those results have not been seen yet, especially of a guy like Cam Coleman. Again, he was okay last year. Again, he was certainly behind guys like Ron Williams and Jeremiah Smith. And again, part of that is just because you're on a, let's just say, that shitty roster with a horrible quarterback situation. But now that's not an excuse anymore. Or at least 6 years on next 10. You have upgraded to an extent at quarterback. Your second year, you're up there again with guys like Ron Williams, Jeremiah Smith, where you should see a leap from Cam Coleman because he's really good. Again, there's a reason why Bud Elliott and those guys in Pair of 3 were really high on, not really high, but high on Cam Coleman. Even though they weren't high on the team of Auburn, but they were high on him. And those are guys I trust. So I would expect some of those 5-star guys who Auburn's been recruiting the past couple of years, even including this past recruiting cycle, you would expect them to step up a little bit, or at least take a next step, or take a next leap, if you will, and to improve. So, there's certainly a path for Auburn to win this year, but it's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy, but I think for Hugh Freeze and just the fan base alone, just to, get some sanity here. And look, it's a good thing the basketball team is doing what they're doing, and that's good. But basketball is not the thing that drives the revenue here for Auburn. It's just not. It's football. It's always been football and always will be, regardless of how good basketball is or not. So for the fan standpoint, from the sanity of the fan base, they better hope that this year is an improvement, regardless of what that means. Whether it's 7 wins, 8 wins, 9 wins, I really don't care. Just there has to be some improvement, or else come December, we're going to have some tough conversations. We're going to have a lot of negative press and articles about Hugh Freeze, and it's not going to be good. I'll just say that. Whether or not I believe that, or whether or not I necessarily have joined that, is beyond the point. That's just what's going to happen. You're just going to have a lot of negativeness surrounding Auburn if this year does not warrant results or improvement. Whatever that may be. Again, whether it's 9 wins, 10 wins, 7 wins, 8 wins, any of those solutions are an improvement. Is it what Auburn fans would want? Let's say if they go 7-5 this year in regular season. Would Auburn fans necessarily enjoy that? No. Is it a step in the right direction? Yeah, it is. And I think with this new world of college football, I think fans, especially of these second-tier, third-tier schools like Auburn is, I think they need to, or at least to a certain extent, maybe recalibrate their expectations for especially the new team with the new super conferences and 12 team or expanded playoff now. Going 7-5 is sort of the new 9-3. It's not bad. It's good. And I think fans need to sort of recalibrate themselves into that thinking. May not like it, but I think that at least warrants you that there is improvement being made. And who knows, maybe next year could be pretty good. At least we know even more of an improvement. Especially if you're able to get the roster together, too. If you're able to hold it together, no one transfers or leaves. We'll need some more water here, and then we'll wrap up the show of this DC drama. Then we'll wrap it up. And I will just say, too, this has not been my best show. We'll say that. And some of it's a little bit because I was up late last night, but you know, it is what it is. Whether it's a bad show or a good show, it's still live. And I think, given these circumstances, it's not bad. I think we're doing okay, but not my best. So I figured we'll end the show here, or end the show with some more DC drama here. This came out this morning. This whole DC stuff in general. And look, I'll probably do a whole wider topic on this at some point, but not to rehash what other folks have been saying, what I've been saying. This whole situation with DC and Warner Bros. In particular, it's mind-boggling how bad this has been. For example, like today, there's been reports coming out that Colin Farrell, who was the star of the Penguin show, and he was in the Batman, first Matt Reeves Batman, he is supposedly in the running for this stupid Sergeant Rock movie, who I have no idea what that character was until like 2 months ago when I did a basic Google search. Like, oh, okay, it's an actual DC character, not something that James Gunn made up out of his ass and said, hey, okay, here's a character, you can do this. But essentially, he kind of did do that. So there's reports coming out, and this is not just Twitter people. This is actually real, that Colin Farrell has been reported to be eyed for this Sergeant Rock movie, which, you know, by the way, too, and again, I'll probably rehash this again at some point when we do a broader topic on this whole DC James Gunn situation. It's just mind-boggling how you guys remember that first, you know, DC video that James Gunn made, and it looked like it was in a closet, like a hostage video, where, you know, he's sitting there in front of the camera and talking about the future projects and whatnot. He's talking about, like, you know, the Authority and, you know, the Wonder Woman spinoff TV show and all this, you know, all these projects, right? And he's laying out the whole roadmap for, you know, for the new DC studios and whatnot. And look, it was poorly produced, but the idea was certainly there, right? You had the Authority movie. Oh, I'm going to sneeze here just a second here. Hold on, I think it's coming. We're live, by the way. Of course, evidence of that's live. Hold on. First time ever having on air. But what was I talking about before I sneezed? Okay, yes, the DC slate, the first original video that James Gunn put out years ago. So he announces all these projects. You know, the Authority. You know, the new Batman movie that he's doing. All this and that, all these movies. All that's changed. Like, everything in that video, you can still find it. I'm pretty sure it's still out there. That DC put out. Everything in that video, mostly. I don't know what I was trying to say there. Everything in that video, everything that was announced for the majority of that stuff is not relevant anymore. For example, the Authority movie's not happening. That's widely reported by Jeff Snyder that. The Authority movie, which, by the way, one of those characters is appearing in Superman. They've already cast someone. That movie's not happening, at least in the live-action realm. I think there's discussion going on. Again, it's from what Jeff Snyder's been reporting on, and he's really, really reliable. I mean, a lot of folks hate him, but what he's reported on is mostly correct. And based on what he's been saying, that Authority movie is no longer going to be live-action. It's probably going to be just all-out canceled, or maybe pushed back, or just indefinitely delayed, or it's going to be an animated movie. Okay. I think that kind of shows you where they're at right now, where it's just like everything that original DC sort of state of the studio thing that James Gunn did years ago when he was first brought on. Almost like 95% of those projects he announced is not happening. That's just the way I'm reading it. And what's even crazier is that movies like Sergeant Rock and this, you know, Clayface movie, like, none of that stuff was even announced in that original video. So it's like, not only are they just flat out canceling stuff without even publicly saying it, you know, James is still, you know, a lot of ways still denying this stuff, but then again, pretty reliable people are saying you are. So it's like, okay, either you're lying about it, or people like Jeff Snyder are lying about it, which I don't think he is. And it sounds like, whatever. It's a whole stupid thing that James is doing. And look, this is someone who's mostly a fan of James Gunn. I think him taking over was generally a good thing. But the way he's went about this from a PR perspective, from a just an upfront perspective, and a marketing standpoint, has been awful. And the fact that, again, they're canceling stuff and they're announcing stuff through the trades, which is basically official as it can get, versus James Gunn officially announcing it on Twitter or social media. But it's like a Sergeant Rock movie. It's like, what? Like, okay, a Clayface movie. Okay. I was listening to Josh from Damn Nerds earlier during his stream, and I kind of agree with him to a certain extent that it's almost as if, James, and it's not even Josh saying this, even some of these Hollywood trades even start bringing this up too, that it's almost like James is doing this, the way he's handling this from a business standpoint versus the creative stuff. It's almost as if James is just doing this on purpose just to screw over DC and Warner Brothers and help out Marvel. I mean, I know that's not really happening. I'm not insinuating that's happening, but it's almost the point where it's like, that's not even that crazy that he's just doing this on purpose to be a troll. I don't think he is, but it's like, yeah, this going on, the Sergeant Rock movie, and this is also, too, by the way, even more evidence that he's screwing over Matt Reeves and his Batman stuff. And, of course, the reporting that's been going on that James wants Robert Pattinson to basically be inherited to be his Batman, and sort of avoiding having to cast another actor because it's probably going to save him a lot more money. So, I mean, look, if you're a fan of the Batman franchise, and I know a lot of folks are in denial about this, but you guys are getting screwed. Because I do not believe that second Matt Reeves film is happening. I don't believe a Penguin season 2 is happening either. I think that's kind of clear now. And I think with this new report and the discussions going around about, Matt Reeves and James Gunn are at odds with each other, and, again, the whole Robert Pattinson stuff going on, what's going on with him, is he joining, James Gunn's DC stuff, is he not? What's true about that? Personally, I think those discussions are definitely happening. I think, James Gunn denying that stuff makes him look even worse, because then you have people like Jeff Snyder who are, again, as reliable as you can get, or even saying that stuff. And it's like, okay, James, it's like, you're putting yourself into a corner here, buddy. Either it is happening, or Jeff Snyder and all these Hollywood, trade reporters are stupid and don't know what we're talking about. So, I don't know. Again, this it's just weird, man. I cannot believe, and look, I know, Disney in general is in a bit of a mess too, and they're not much better. But at least they're not Warner Brothers, where their studio's literally going to probably disappear off the face of the earth if Superman isn't successful, which is a real thing. We touched on that on the Thursday show, which is like that in itself boggles the mind. The studio has been around much longer than probably your grandparents. It's been around for over 100 years. It's just gonna fall off the face of the earth. Like, I still can't believe that, but unfortunately, that's where they're at right now. And I guess the sort of line the mood a little bit, at least this comes from Jeff Snyder's newsletter that's been reported out there by a lot of people now, or not reported, but regurgitated, that the feeling around Superman, look, there's been a lot of concern about this movie. Yes, I'm hoping this will be good. I think it will be good, but the stuff I'm hearing from guys like Jeff Snyder and, Josh from Damn Nerds is that, just some of the vibe, it just doesn't feel right? The whole reporting about, it's, Guardians of the Galaxy meets Superman, and they're sort of making this like a jokey comedic film. That's like, no, dude, that's not what Superman is. That's not the vibe I want. And look, I'm not even I'm a DC fan. I'm not a hardcore DC fan. But even I understand, look, that's not the vibe of Superman. Let's like, so those initial reports, and you have what Joshua of them nerds heard from his source, who was like working with like video game stuff with Gunn, and they're also hearing the exact same thing about, the Superman film to be very comedic and sort of, goofy, if you will. Even that just like reaffirms what Snyder's been reporting on. So that all sounded bad, and of course, like I just talked about, the whole state of the studio in general just feels like it's in a shambles right now. But from what Jeff's been hearing, and what's so conflicting about this is that, okay, you're hearing a lot of negativity about this from Jeff Snyder and Jeff's side of things, and even Dana Verde's side of things. But then you're also hearing some other stuff to where, yeah, the film, some other sources of information that, yeah, the film's pretty good. Yeah, it's, sort of balancing comedy and seriousness pretty well. And not to mention, too, they've also had to bring in, what was it, the marketing guy who used to work for Marvel and Disney. Now he's been hired, apparently. That was reported, I think, a month ago. Listen, man, the Superman film, based on what we heard from last week and just in general, this thing cannot fail. I mean, this thing literally is going to decide the fate of Warner Brothers' future. Like, literally, this thing fails and it doesn't make a whole lot of, like, if it doesn't make probably $1 billion and it is not received critically well, like, Warner Brothers can go the way, like, it just disappears off the face of the earth. And like I said last weekend, that boggles the mind. It's just, I can't believe this is where we're at with them. So, yeah, some good news. And maybe it's not as bad as we thought it was, but still, it's not good. Or look, man, I just don't know the thing of this. It sucks that, look, I want DC to succeed. I want Superman to succeed. I want James Gunn to succeed. But the way they've been going about this from a public standpoint, from a front-facing standpoint, from a business standpoint, I just don't know what to say. And this is just such a mess right now. The fact that they're not only mismanaging all this stuff, and again, all this stuff they announced originally is not even happening anymore. The fact that they're also pissing off the Matt Reeves fan base, the people that like the Batman and the Penguin, that stuff's not even happening. So now that side of the fan base is getting screwed over, and those people who like that stuff are getting screwed. It's just like, can DC and Warner Bros. Just function properly for once? Because that feels like ever since the Nolan Batman movies, it's like one of the last 10 they were actually put out competent pieces of content. And look, don't tell me the Snyder stuff is working. It wasn't working. I don't care what you say. I know the Snyder fans, will go to bat for him and, be like, oh, Zack Snyder is the best, filmmaker that, the comic movies I've ever seen before. Cool. I can get water from my fridge today. That's great. Fantastic. But they've not had stability for 10 years plus. It's been a long time since I've had that, and I wish that wasn't the case. I wish they had stability, and I wish they weren't to this point where the studio that's been around again for 100 plus years is going to just go away. Like, Warner Brothers has been around just as long, even longer than Disney has. Like, it really is. It's sad, man. Not to mention too the original Looney Tunes short films, ones that were around in like the 30s and 40s. Now they're also supposedly been taken off of HBO Max. It's like, what? Man, I cannot fathom how bad this is. But yeah, that's the latest on DC, the whole drama there. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. It's the only way I can describe it. It's just mind-boggling. Okay, we're going to end the show here. It's over. So thank you for tuning in. If you're listening to this live on the podcast feed, I know we've been going on for over an hour here, but these shows can be pretty long. So I will announce my plans for later in the week on Twitter about what the rest of the week is going to look like. I'll just tell you, probably won't have a normal show Thursday. That's all I'm saying. So keep an eye out for that. Until the next time we meet, thank you for tuning in for Verticals Podcast. Again, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, podcast feed, Twitter as well. I'm active on there as well. So, yeah. So until the next time we have a show, have a good rest of your week, or good rest of your week, but a good rest of your Tuesday, Wednesday, and I guess until we have another show. Take care, and we'll see you then.